Now moving into a story that totally won't get anybody bogged down on and is completely calm, cool, and 100%. Idaho Senator pushes for Hamas to be seen as a terrorist organization. This comes by KTVB7 by staff. In a significant move, over 30 U.S. senators, including Idaho's own Mike Crapo, have penned a letter to the United States ambassador to the United Nations. The letter carries a weighted request to label Hamas as a terrorist organization and impose sanctions on it. The senator's letter is unambiguous in its comparison of Hamas to other notorious terrorist organizations. Quote, recent events have demonstrated that Hamas's actions, tactics, and stated goals are in many ways indistinguishable from Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other terrorist organizations the United Nations has sanctioned. End quote. The senators didn't stop at drawing parallels. They pointed out that the U.S. Department of Treasury has designated Hamas, along with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the other Popular Front of the Liberation of Palestine, as foreign terrorist organizations since October 1997. These groups have also been listed as specially designated global terrorists since October of 2001. The senators' letters highlight the international consensus on this issue. Countries and international entities such as Australia, Canada, the European Union, Japan, Israel, the Organization of American States, Prague, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom have all designated Hamas as a terrorist organization. Switzerland is also actively exploring legal avenues to designate Hamas as a terrorist entity. This move by the senators, including our own Mike Crapo, underscores the gravity of the situation and the need for decisive action. How the United Nations will respond to this call for action remains to be seen. Which, as any of you that have been following the news, I think as we're recording this on a Friday night, unless something else happens, because I swear every day some other riot or thing happens around the world on this topic. There was a huge pro-Palestine riot that happened outside the Democratic National Convention there in Washington, D.C., and it got violent. On the flip side, there was also a very big I guess you call it protest, yeah, or demonstration, maybe would be the correct word for it, that was happening there on it's called the National Mall, that area there that they have in front of Washington, D.C., right? Is that the name for it? They had a huge demonstration there. I think that was 400,000. I might be off on that number. I know it had a 4 somewhere in there, and it was over 1,000. That was a very big demonstration that occurred there, but some people were contrasting the different ways that those both played out compared to the two, the type of violence and the type of rhetoric and drama that occurred with the pro-Palestine demonstration and then the pro-Israel demonstration that happened there at the Capitol. You can go look for those for yourself. This definitely is an issue that is escalating, but it is really great to see that Mike Crapo, which he doesn't make the news a ton. I mean, I try to follow what he's doing, but I can definitely tell, is not a social media person. The other 2 House members, they post a lot that we talked about before. But as for our congressman there, Mike Crapo, this is really cool to see and very encouraging.
Yeah, I think my question would be, what does it do for us to designate Hamas a terrorist organization? Because I agree that they probably are, and it seems like they should be, but I think my question is a little more deep than that. What does that designation allow us to do?
I am not speaking as a 100% authoritative person on this, but words have meaning and definitions have meaning. And so in the first step with any of this in the U.S., I think it's good to define those definitions and those labels correctly. And this is, I think, a great step forward in that. Now, what will that result then be? I think that depends, because there's other times where I think we've seen in American history where, we've defined certain things saying, my brain is blanking it here, that this country is its own independent sovereign nation, and then other times saying it is or isn't. But once we have a defined definition, then we can start making decisions on how we're to act. Also, I'd argue I could totally see where this is a bit of a political move by the senators here to say, hey, if we designate Hamas as a terrorist organization, right, well, then those that are supporting it, those other representatives that are pushing for it, those that want to give funding to Hamas, if we have it designated as that, and that's what it is, then it gives us a lot more weight, a lot more of an argument to fight back against those people that are wanting to support are wanting to fight for the case of Hamas when we have this overwhelming support internationally by a international defining body of what the definition of it is, independent of what our definition is, because we could then say, hey, look, it's not just us, Mr. USA, that says they're terrorists. We're also looking at the, United Nations or whatever else, and they're also saying it. So, there's a lot of consensus and weight to be brought on that. And that has pretty big political implications when you're trying to make arguments and debates. As for, the question of how that would then cause action beyond the political, trying to snipe your neighbor there and trying to advance your own ends, I'm not 100% sure. My best guess, granted, if John wants to pull up in Perplexity over there and grab that and put this question in, because I have no doubt it can look at the bylaws real quick for me. If I had to guess, the one thing that it's probably going to do first off the bat is that it's going to start cutting a lot more funding avenues off for Hamas, which then supports, shall we say, our friends there, the Jews, with their fight and different issues that are occurring. And also, I would argue probably would bring Hamas more to the negotiating table if a ceasefire does come, once that label has been put and those restrictions and the money flow gets cut a bit more.
Sure. So here, I did exactly what you said, went to Perplexity and put this in. So designating Hamas as a terrorist organization allows the U.S. to take several actions to combat terrorism and its financial support networks. So you're right there. So it plays a critical role in curtailing support for terrorist activities and pressuring such organizations. It allows the U.S. government to stigmatize and isolate the designated organization internally to deter donations or contributions to and economic transactions with the organization. And then additionally, it alerts other governments to U.S. concerns about individuals or entities aiding terrorism and promotes due diligence by such governments and private sector entities operating within their territories to avoid associations with terrorists. A lot of it seems to come down to financial and cutting off the financial aid and support for the terrorist organization that is Hamas. Right.
Which is what I was guessing it was going to be, which I think is a pretty reasonable step to do according to the actions that they did recently. We'll put it that way.
Right. That seems reasonable to me.
But it'll be interesting to see how that goes. As it said here at the bottom of my script and for the researching of it, still remains to be seen what the United Nations will do on this. I think the takeaway from this is I think this is a good step moving forward. I know those that might be pro-Hamas, I have a doubt that people of that ilk would be listening to a show such as this for very long.
That's probably very true.
I'm going out on a limb here. Maybe we're going to cut our audience in half. I got no idea. And I'm welcome to anyone joining us, but I have a feeling you're probably not going to be on long if you hold that position. But you're more than welcome. But also really glad to hear that Mike Crapo is doing some stuff. We don't also always kind of see his hand in things and what's going on as much as we do with the House lately. So it's really encouraging to see him taking some action and being involved in stuff like this.